Hello and welcome to another edition of the Super Show, the DFS Super Show. It's a niche sports edition with CFL. I'm joined by Pete. It's been a while since I've had a show with him. I'm, of course, co-hosting with him today, Walter Waddell, aka W85. A big edge to be had in CFL. We've been grinding out the Olympics. That is winding down. The semifinals for the men's is happening tonight and the women's tomorrow. The 8th is the last day of that, and it goes right into Summer League, which is happening right now. We're kind of talking about it. If there's Summer League DFS, we're going to be covering that. But this is going to be all about CFL. We did have it a couple of years ago before the COVID lockdown that canceled their season out. I know Pete did some stuff with it a couple of years ago. Miz, very profitable sport. Very excited. Pete, CFL, man, we're going to be grinding this each week going into college season. We're going to have our hands full. I know you already do with MLB, but how are you feeling about the CFL season upon us?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We had, a couple of good seasons 2 years ago, and it kind of reminds me when we were doing arena football, another niche sport that we were kind of crushing every week. A fun sport, especially stick with us, especially with the late information. CFL, like they don't have to submit their lineups like 24 hours before kickoff and all that. So there's a lot of advantage you can get by sticking with us guys. You'll be doing the content pretty much every week. So the games are spread out right across 4 days. So we got to pay attention to injuries and all that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Typically it seems like there's like 2 games on Friday, 2 games on Saturday. I think it's a typical slate. Yep. This time there's one on Thursday for the opening day. So it's across three days. So yeah, a lot of people will probably be stacking the first game because they don't want to monitor injury news, or they want to see their name at the top of the leaderboard. So you can definitely get a lot of edge in those Saturday games. And you guys will find that as you grind this out each week. The first day tournament is a 10K to first. I think it's a 35K prize pool called the Return Special. 4,100 entrants, 41117 to be exact, to the $10 entry. So jump in that, throw a couple entries in. That's fun. I can't say for sure that it'll be 10K every week. A lot of times with these niche sports, we get a first week or two big prize pools, and then as it starts, thinning out the herd a bit, and the real true sickos like ourselves play, they typically go down to 1 or 2K. So let's ride with it while we have it. There's a cool 69 entrant, $27 tournament in there too. You don't have to be quite as crazy to win that. So lots of stuff going on. If you haven't played CFL DFS in the past, we'll definitely go over the rules with you positional wise, how they score it and everything. So we'll do that now. If you guys are watching live, we appreciate it. In the right-hand side there of the YouTube chat and live chat, go ahead and answer, ask any questions if you got them. We'll answer them as we go through here. With the roster construction, pretty simple. You get 1 quarterback, 1 running back that you have to play, 2 wide receivers, and then you get 2 flex spots that can be a wide receiver or a running back. This is a really pass-heavy league. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. Do you really want to get, running backs who catch the ball a lot, or they're a true workhorse because most of these teams are going to just run or throw the ball a ton. And then you get 1 DST. DST is not something I typically will build around. It's a spot where, whatever salary I have left, I'll plug it in there. There are occasions where the offense is so inept that it makes sense to play the DST because of their points that they get. So I'm just going to let you guys know that right now. The main difference with that, they get what's called a rouge, which is sometimes called a single. It's defined as a 1-point score that is given for certain plays that involve kicking the ball into the end zone. So basically, if that's not a return, like you can't just kick it in the end zone and have it returned. It's got to be like a straight kick into the end zone with no return. They get a 1 point. So the DST gets that single or rouge point. That's the main difference. Everything else, you get 4 points for a passing touchdown, pretty standard. 6 points for rushing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. QB bonuses, 3 points for a 300+ passing yard game, +1 for every 25 yards, and -1 for an interception. Running backs, 1 for every 10 yards, 3 points for 100+ rushing yards, and the wide receivers, same thing, 3 for 100 and 1 point per reception. So PPR format, tried and true, which we love. And then also one nice thing about this is with kick returners, if you roster a value guy or something, I know in the NFL, you can stop me if I'm wrong, Pete, I'm pretty sure I don't grind as much as you guys, but I don't think you get yardage points for return guys, where in CFL you do. So every 20 return yards, you get a 1 point, from kicks, punts, all that kind of stuff. Obviously a 6-point return off a kick and punt returns. So you can get guys who are cheap, like Reilly for one of these teams we're going to talk about. If he's like a 5.5 guy, gets a couple carries, maybe a couple catches, but he'll end up with like 180 return yards, maybe a touchdown. You can get this guy for cheap in your flex spot that, is going to get maybe 10, 12 points from return yards, then score a touchdown. All of a sudden you've got a 4X guy getting you 20 points and he never even caught the ball. So just keep that in mind if you guys are looking for potential value options. It's a lot of, I've seen Edge in the past getting a returner that people just sleep on. He'll be like 3% owned too. So something to look at.
That's a good point on like Chris Rainey for BC. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's true because he's actually gonna run the ball and he's gonna get some return yards, so it's gonna add up for him. He's cheap.
Yeah, so that's a good way to get, as we get into these, some of these receivers that are 8K, 9K, 10K, it's like, wow, where do I get value at? Because I don't know what the bottom barrel receivers are. Getting a return guy is a good way to do that. Is there anything else, strategy wise, pay structure or not pay structure, points wise that you want to add or anything?
The only thing I kind of jumped out at me is you're going to see slot back a lot in CFL, especially projections and lineups and all these different sites. So slot backs are considered wide receivers on DraftKings. So that's pretty much it. Slot back's a big position in CFL.
That's a good call out because you'll see that in write-ups too. In my little blurb here, I have the article I'll be releasing this evening. I did write that slot back and receivers is something that you'll hear us talk about. Slot backs are kind of like this combo, versatile RB, tight end, wide receiver all in one. They do everything. They'll block, get carries, catches, and stuff like that. So some of these higher end receivers, they're listed as receivers, are actually slot backs. So you might hear us talk about that. And if you're confused, that's exactly what they are. They typically get a higher number of targets and touches as well. So someone like Brandon Banks, who we're going to talk about for Hamilton, who's damn near 11K, he's considered a slot back, and he does pretty much everything for their team. All right, so we're going to jump in the slate here. We're going to go team by team and kind of highlight some of the players that you need to look out for. And this doesn't necessarily mean they're a play right now. We're just going to highlight, there's a running back, quarterback, receiver group that you're going to be dealing with this team. And then we'll go ahead and say, for this week, though, this is what we're looking at. Just so you guys have an idea, we want to make it more of a preview. There is only one odds out so far because this game on Thursday, the Friday and Saturday games don't have odds yet. Right now, Hamilton is a minus 160 favorite on DraftKings that I saw, over under a 51.5. Winnipeg is going to be without two of their key players, which we'll talk about here in a second. I think that line's probably going to move to minus 200 and above. So if you're a betting person and you want to get some value, you definitely want to hit that soon before the rest of the industry has time to catch up on those injuries. So Hamilton Tiger Cats, let's talk about them. They have an explosive offense. I'm going to talk about their injuries, and I'm going to kick to Pete to highlight their players. For week one, key injuries, Braylon Addison and Devier Posey, two of their really strong receivers for this year that are going to put up numbers, are both on the 6-game absent list, serious injuries. So they're going to be without them for the first part of the season. Would be a significant loss for most other teams, but this Tiger Cats team has about 6 receivers that could legit put up 1,000 yards on most rosters. So it won't hurt them as much as it would a normal team. And then Don Jackson is going to be out week one with a hip injury. So 3 really key pieces on offense out. But like I said, this offense is such a juggernaut that they probably won't even miss those guys, really, which is really scary when you consider things. So who are some of the main players you to highlight for this team at quarterback, receiver, running back, guys that people should know?
And also, I just meant to mention, you guys that are in the chat, if you have any questions, throw them in that chat. We'll try to pay attention to them as we're talking. If not, our producer will. But yeah, for Hamilton, obviously, a lot of it everything goes through Jeremiah Masoli. Honestly, I don't have the prices in front of me. I'm not prepared. But Jeremiah Masoli is, he's the key to this offense. He's been the king there. Best season came 2018, 5,200 yards, 28 touchdowns in the regular season. Came out on fire, but then he blew his ACL in week 7. So he's back though. He's starting. So I mean, Masoli's key, and then it goes right to Banks. I mean, you brought up Banks. Brandon Banks he's a stud. I mean, he had 112 catches last year, which was a club record. I keep saying last year, 2019, 1,550 yards, 13 touchdowns. He was MVP of the league. So it's going to be tough to get Masoli and Banks together, but that's probably one of your biggest combos, I believe, in the league. I also have kind of a 6,400 is Jaylon Acklin. So especially is Braylon Addison ruled out? I keep saying that Braylon Addison may be ruled out. Yeah. So Addison, Posey, and Jackson are all going to be out for Hamilton here on week one.
So Addison will be out for 6 games.
So I would think that Jalen Ackland could come in, and he caught 10 targets last year, 120 yards, one touchdown. So, I mean, let's see, 6,400. So I think Ackland's kind of a sleeper there also. So that's what I got for Hamilton. Also, I guess you have their running back Irons. So, I mean, I wouldn't consider him a must play, but I mean, Malik Irons, he's decent value, $4,700 though. I think he's probably going to split some work with Thomas Erlington, right? From what I've seen.
That's what they're saying, yeah, with the beta saying on Twitter there. Thomas Erlington, yeah, Erlington's going to get the start. But, you know, obviously there'll probably be some touches pilfered there. Erlington looked like semi-stud though to start. Keep on saying last year too. People know what we mean, I guess. He had that lower body injury that cost him the season. He had just a phenomenal week 3. He scored 31 fantasy points, 150 all-purpose yards, and a touchdown. In just the 4 games there. Obviously, the 4th game he got hurt, so it wasn't really a ton of work. But he did catch 11 passes for 193 yards, so he's going to be involved on passing and running, which is great. PPR scoring, obviously, he's going to be a big-time focal point for them. You had mentioned Irons. I've been reading a lot of chatter around Twitter and some of the beat writers and kind of just digging around and reading some articles about CFL stuff that they think he's going to pilfer touches. There's even some people talking about him being a potential play. Makes sense. I don't think that I would go there in my main lineup just because there's some semi-cheaper guys in the like 5 to 6K range that we're going to talk about here in the next few teams that I think you can definitely go. I mean, I'm going cheap at running back, certainly. That may end up being the popular move. But I definitely like Thomas Erlington as a GPP type of guy. As far as the weapons go, he mentioned the 2 wide receivers that are out for them, and Addison and Posey. Marcus Tucker, it looks like somebody's talking about him in the YouTube chat there. That's a good call. Actually, in my write-up that's coming out, he's actually out of the group here. If I can't afford Banks, which I may not be able to, I think Tucker is my favorite play out of the group. 38, 475, and 2 in 2019. A lot of good talk about him out of camp. They're thinking he's going to be the biggest benefactor of that Addison injury. So I really like him. I think he's cheap enough to, fit into my main lineup. If I'm going to play, Masoli, I'm not sure I'm going to be doing that just yet. I mean, he's only 5'4" for Tucker, potential big time production if the defense pays attention to Banks. So I could see Tucker being, the second most targeted player on the squad, at least in week 1. So he's definitely the guy I like. And then Marshall, Jalen Marshall down here at 4.5 is going to get some additional work as well. So a very high powered passing offense that should put up a lot of fantasy goodness. Like I said, if they can lose 2 of their top guys like that and still be favored to put up a lot of points, that just tells you how good this team is. I'm a Husky fan, so Jeremiah Masoli is an enemy of mine. He was at Oregon at one time, so I'm not a big Masoli guy, but hey, he's doing big things. He beat out Dane Evans. Evans looked good in his time in 2019. It's always good to have a QB competition, a close one, make them at the top of their game. So Masoli's definitely ready to get the season started here against a pretty decent Winnipeg squad. So let's move over.
I'm just looking at Banks' lot. I mean, Banks has got a hell of a Florida.
Absolutely.
Last year he had 5 games over 30 fantasy points. He had 43 points against Calgary, 52 points against Montreal. He only had 2 games which he filled to reach double digit fantasy points in that year. So I mean, that's a huge ceiling for him. And now, especially with Addison missing, that Banks is almost near a must play. I think. I mean, did you say you're playing him in your main lineup? But you say you're.
I haven't decided yet. I haven't really built just yet. I was waiting for that injury news to come through, like I saw today. But I think I'm on Tucker for sure. If I go Masoli, I would probably run a bank stack. But there's a couple guys that are cheaper that I feel like maybe don't have quite the ceiling, but a similar, projection in terms of what they'll get on some of these other teams that are in the 8-9K range that I really, really like. So I'm always looking for value in these niche sports when I can find it. So, but no, if you have the salary to play a Brent Banks, then yeah, there would be no reason not to, because he's been having some interviews. I was watching a video on him. He was talking about how good their receiver room is, but he was telling the guys that, no offense, he doesn't want to cause waves, but he's going for records. And he's not playing games. So he's looking to get the ball each and every time, every snap. So Banks is going to be putting up numbers.
You got to remember too, I mean, Jalen Ackland in 2019, I mean, he actually had 58 receptions for 706 yards, 3 touchdowns. So Ackland is going to see the ball too.
Definitely. All right. So the Blue Bombers, key injuries for them. Andrew Harris, the all-world running back, just an absolute monster. He's going to be out for week 1. There is chatter he may miss longer. They don't want to say for the season, but it sounds like it's a pretty serious calf injury. And then Darvin Adams is going to be out. So a lot of injuries in this game. Darvin Adams, easily one of their top 2 wide receivers, I would think, week in and week out. He has a serious shoulder injury that he suffered in camp, or I believe it was the middle of camp. And he just hasn't been able to take the field yet. So he's out. So we're looking at some decent guys here. Receiver-wise, slot-bag-wise, Kenny Lawler, he had 51, 763, and 5 touchdowns. Nick Dembski, 54, 669, and 3. I think Dembski's, when I watched the Grey Cup run that they had, because I got all into CFL a couple years ago, and I was watching that Dembski was a guy that every game I was like, what? That guy was doing something. And I just feel like maybe he's going to get slept on a little bit because everyone's going to be rushing for the bigger names. Dembski's only 5'8", so there's again another potential guy that could put up 20 plus fantasy points here on tomorrow. That's at a really cheap price. And then Charles Nelson is a guy starting at slot back. He's been getting a lot of good things said about him at the camp reports. He doesn't have much stats from the previous year, but they're talking about him making a big impact this season as well. So those are the 3 names that I'm highlighting because of Darvin Adams being injured. And then as far as running back goes, with Harris out, he gets a big workload. Values maybe Brady Oliveira. He's going to be stepping into the RB1 role. A lot of people thought that it'd be Johnny Augustin. He's the one that has the prize pick total and not Oliveira. So maybe the Augustin under is in play. It's 42 yards, I think, on prize picks. I was hoping they'd put it at like 60 because I think it would have been an easy under. Brady did miss 2019 with an injury of his own. Sounds like he's pretty anxious to get on the field, get all those snaps. So at just 5.3K, there's another really good play. So it might end up that, we're going to be able to fit Banks easily because there's a plethora of playable 5 to 8K guys that I really, I built out my first player pool before we came on the show. It's a little bigger than I'd like, but there's a ton of them at that 5 to 8K range. So Brady Oliveira for sure. I don't think I'd be touching any of the quarterback, Zach Colorado's, he got the start after the injuries to Austin Nichols, Chris Streveler. I'm kind of taking a bit of a wait and see with him. Obviously they're, defending Grey Cup champs. They're going to do big things, but I want to see some consistency from him before I start targeting him in DFS. There's just other QBs on the slate that I feel much better about. So is there anybody that you feel you got to have from this group or anyone I didn't mention?
Well, and I think you're right, because I seen a report from a beat saying it looks like I am seeing Oliveira as coming in the starting lineup with Darius Stewart. But so is that gonna make somebody like an Augustine? I mean, it makes you wonder how people are gonna go. Are they gonna right away? You think it's gonna be Augustine? Was last year when Harris was suspended, Augustine had scored 14.5 and 21.8 fantasy points, replacing Harris. So people are not paying attention to the news. I mean, I'm not saying it's confirmed to Juwan that's gonna be Oliveira. So that may be something you might even want to touch. Because how many times we've been through that in college and everything else where we're on this Oliveira, next year, Augustine gets all touches. So that may be actually a touchy situation here. But Caleros possibly, though, I'm thinking is with Harris out, though, you might actually see a fantasy uptick with Caleros, possibly because they're going to need to pass more than their typical game script. So I'm thinking that, he may actually come in as kind of a sleeper here. As nobody's looking at him as a top DFS player, but hey, he's only 7,700, I guess he is. So it's without Harris, you may see him, checking down and passing. So maybe we get some more points out of Claris also.
Especially if they go down, they're probably going to try to ball control with Oliveira, just to keep that offense off the field. But if they fall behind, 14, 20 points, then that's a good call, especially for GPP. He's gonna have to start chucking it.
Typically they're going to run it well, so
he'll be super low on too, because like you said, he's not a main team guy. But game script wise, he may end up having to throw the ball a shit ton. All right. So I don't have odds for the next games here, but we're just going to go through and talk about the teams. BC Lions, only real key injury there is QB Michael Reilly. He's listed as questionable. coaching staff seems pretty confident. I read a report today that they're optimistic. That was as of, I think, earlier today, around 1 o'clock my time on the Pacific, that he'd play. He hasn't really been practicing this week, but they're confident that he's going to play. He's kind of the epitome of a GPP guy for me. In 2019, I had a couple games where I'd run an alt and he'd do really well, 30 game, and then he had other games where he put up like a 9. So they had trouble keeping him upright though. They did bring in some guys to shore up that line. So as long as he can stay upright, that was the problem with your Syracuse boys there last year. They couldn't keep their quarterbacks upright. So if Reilly can get good protection, he could definitely do well. I'm probably looking elsewhere. If for some reason he wasn't able to go, late decision that something changes, they do have former Ohio legend Nathan Rourke as their backup. All about him as college football guys. It'd be a nice value if Reilly can't go. So somebody in that sub 7K range for a GPP. The new RB1 for the Lions, former Edmonton, reserve, I guess, Shaq Cooper. He's getting a ton of hype. His scores on Price Picks are pretty high. He's adequate with Edmonton, though. Rushed for 361 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a 5.3 YPC, very strong in my eyes. I want to keep an eye on his workload before I really jump in. I assume it'll be nice. I don't know. I'm going cheap. I'm just going to full disclosure. I'm going cheap at running back. I did mention Chris Reilly when we were explaining the, return guys. Rainey's one of those cheaper guys to look at for GPPs. And sometimes I'm okay running him in my, my main lineup. We won't need him in our main because there's so much good value. But as we get to the middle of the season, weeks 8, 9, 10, and value is harder to come by, Rainey's exactly the type of guy that can help you do some things in your lineup. He's had 100+ return yards 8 times in 2019, 4 other games over 80, sprinkle in a few carries, some receptions, pretty sneaky value guy. I think his price was even down in like the upper 4s at times for me. So I definitely am a fan of his, but I think it's really the receivers, maybe just, running a solo receiver from this team that I'm going to be looking at. You want to tell us a little bit about some of the receivers that you're looking at?
The only one that kind of jumps out is, you got Dominique Grimes.
Yep, that's my guy.
He was
Ottawa.
College. He played Murray State, I believe.
Yeah.
I think he came from Murray State, but I think you got Rhymes is not a bad play, and then you got Burham. I just had Burham's stats pulled up. I think Burham could also be a sneaky play. Also, of course, I saw some, but I'm not jump back to running back, but I had Cooper stats in front of me though, and Cooper's going to be their top rusher, but I do like the Rainey club. Cooper hasn't seen more than 65 carries in the season. So, he's still a good play. He averaged 98.2 yards per game in 2019, and he's a good release receiver, but I'm afraid he's running back. So I'm going back to Brian Burnham. I think that he's actually going to be probably a better focus than Dominique Grimes. But they're going to, Burnham's going to get double teamed. So everything I've seen is I'm going back and forth, and Grimes and Burnham, who's a better play?
Burnham's nice because if everyone does end up going Banks, when you got a $1,200 discount for a guy with an extremely similar floor, maybe only a hair less ceiling. So I definitely am a big fan of running Burnham instead for that discount. Really excited about Dominique Grimes. He was a guy on Ottawa that was rarely owned. You get him for like sub 20% all the time. And he's a really good player. Caught 65 passes, over 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns. Now he's got a more consistent QB that's going to be throwing the ball. It's hard to say a guy that was over 1,000 yards is going to have a breakout season. I'm not exactly, reinventing the wheel saying that, but I feel like he's going to have an even better season with this offense. And it's not as if the defense can really, they might double Burnham or pay more attention to Grimes, but they have 2 other weapons that are going to burn you just the same. Lamar Durant, he averaged over 5 targets per game in 2019. One of the better third options you'll probably find anywhere. 57, 810 yards, 5 touchdowns for a third option. That's phenomenal. And then they brought in Lucky Whitehead, who I believe came from Winnipeg. He had a 52, 521 2 season. So, you're bringing in these 3rd, 4th, 5th options who would be, WR2s on a lot of other rosters like Ottawa. They have a loaded offense. So I don't know if defenses can have the luxury to double team some of these guys. But yes, I do like Burnham. If that ends up being like the heavy leverage, I'm Mr. Leverage. You guys know that. To run Burnham for, over 1K cheaper than Banks, that's going to be the move for me. I'll probably still have some Banks, but 10-8's a lot to put in there. If I end up having all these 5, 6, 7K guys though, and I have the salary, then yeah, I'll play Banks because he's, like I said, he's looking for records. But don't be surprised. A good percentage of the time, Burnham outscores him. It might be crazy. Some of these real hardcore CFL grinders that seem to be in the chat may say that's silly, but that just seemed to be the case in 2019. So we'll see. Saskatchewan Roughriders, key injuries for week 1. Only really see Justin McGinnis, questionable with the hamstring injury. They'll be just fine without him. This is another pretty high-powered offense. My favorite QB, really not reinventing the wheel, going with the highest price QB. This is where that value is going to come in handy. Mr. Cody Fajardo, the highest price on there, elite dual threat. We want dual threat guys. Doesn't matter if it's college level, the professional level NFL, or if it's, CFL, AFL, whatever the heck it is, you want the dual threat guy. And he had a big season, almost 4,700 yards, 18 touchdowns through the air, rushed for over 600, 10 more. The BC defense, they try to shore it up. It's pretty middling in 2019, I'd say, based off the stats. But he's Fajardo's a monster. I think he's going to have a big, hey, remember us type of game. And I really like the weapons he has too. So are you going to be on the Cody train with me since we have this value, or are you looking at some of the other pieces here of the Rough Riders?
Well, I love Shaq Evans though, so you could definitely link both of them up. Look at Evans' line from 2019, 18 games. He had 1,300 yards, 72 passes, and he actually torches. I just saw a stat in the same game against BC at 8 for 158, 1 touchdown in week 6 in 2019. So I'm big on Evans, and if that means I can hook him up with Fajardo, yeah. Fajardo's one of our dual threat guys. We have left, right? Reilly's no longer dual threat guy. So to me, Shaq Evans is probably one of my favorite plays of the day of the whole slate.
Yeah. Only real relevant running back for Saskatchewan is William Powell. It's quite a high prop on Prize Picks. I'll probably leave it alone or hit the under. He's going to get a heavy workload. In 2019, he did rush for over 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns, caught 40 passes for 350 yards, 2 scores. It's a little pricey for me because, like I said, I'm really going to be going cheaper at the running back, position. And then he's going to have a lot of his touchdown equity lost to Cody, which is a problem. If he does all the work and he, it takes a first drive down 45, 50 yards, but then Cody plunges in a touchdown, you're going to be really upset that you paid that price. But he does make a nice contrarian play and go for 120 plus and a touchdown or 2. But he is risky. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, Shaq Evans, definitely the cream of the crop when it comes to Saskatchewan receivers, over 1,400 yards, 5 touchdowns. It's already got a good rapport with Cody now out of camp. Those two, there was a video of them practicing the timing on deep balls, and it looked damn exciting. So I'm definitely on that train, pairing those two. Other guys to know, Kieran Moore, he had 87 catches for over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. He's another elite guy they're looking to build around. They did lose Naaman Roosevelt in the offseason. Nobody picked him up. I guess they just don't want him anymore. He was targeted over 100 times, so that is a ton of targets to go around. Other guys to potentially look at, I have here Jordan Williams Lambert. He's been getting a ton of hype in the training camp. I'm seeing the team beat writers really happy with him. He's only 4.4 in week 1. You can get yourself cheap exposure to this high-powered offense. Talk about him having that 1,000-yard potential. So definitely a lot to like about the Saskatchewan guys. I think they're on par, with the Hamilton guys in terms of ownership. I've already been poking around the industry, looking at some very early, maybe not super accurate ownership, and it looks like Saskatchewan is definitely a good place to turn.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm same thing with fading Powell. I just think it's too much, but I'm over Shaq Evans.
All right, so the next team on here on the Saturday game is, or there's 2 of them, Toronto Argonauts. They had a pretty big QB competition here brewing between Nick Arbuckle and MBT, McLeod Bethel Thompson. Arbuckle looks like he's the favorite, but he is dealing with a hamstring injury, so he's questionable, so chance he doesn't play. I'm not going to be using either one anyways. The Argonauts are going to have to prove to me that they can be anything other than inept now. I know there's been time. They've retooled a bit, but they've lost some people, Walker is gone. We're going to talk about here. They lost to Edmonton. They lost James Wilder to Edmonton. So, I mean, their two best weapons from that horrible season are gone. They do bring in John White to be their main running back from BC. John White was a guy that I really liked in 2019 because he was always, getting high scores, very low owned, always getting touchdown equity. It's a big time guy. I had a heavy workload with them. Somebody in the chat mentioned how BC was, really focused on running a lot until Reilly got there. And White was kind of the last remnants of that, it seems. Did rush almost 200 times for over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. It was a factor in the passing game, 46, 341 in a score. Not going to be using him just now because I don't know what the plan is for the Argonauts. They were just so inept in every category, it seemed. They do have AJ Ouellette out there that could fill for some touches. So it's a wait and see for me. But John White is a guy that I typically like when other people don't, especially in 2019. So we'll see. They do bring in Calgary's finest, Eric Rogers from Calgary in 2019. He was always a good low-owned play, it seemed. Another guy that would get high production for us, but there was always like sub 20% ownership. I even in good matchups. Caught 85 for 1,100, 10 touchdowns. So he's coming over to fill that Darrell Walker role. They can get good quarterback play. To me, he's the WR1 in there, no doubt. And then they've retooled a bit. Devarius Daniels and Ricky Collins come over from Edmonton. It's like almost like they traded with it. It's almost like they traded. They signed these guys, but it's like they pulled a trade on the way because those guys came over from Edmonton. Daniels 67, 890 and 3. Collins 85, over 1,200 and 3. Kind of like Collins, is a sneaky play if you're running multiples. And then, excuse me on this last name, it's a tough one. I tried to look it up, but Juwan Bruskasen, I think is how you say it. Probably butchered that. He had 11 for 168 and 3. Know him from some other leagues before, but he has big playability. I've seen a couple of videos of him just breaking long ones. He's pretty exciting. I think he could potentially be a sneaky, wide receiver with everybody paying attention to Daniels, Collins, Rogers, see Juwan sneak up there and possibly be a WR2 for them. So. What's the plan with Toronto for you? Is this a wait and see as well? Because I mean, them in Ottawa, those were two really atrocious football teams in 2019.
I mean, definitely with the running backs. I'm not touching the White. I'll let these guys. But I'm gonna butcher his name, so I'm just call him Juwan. At anybody's team, I'm big on Juwan, and if you. I just went back and I looked, and he had a big year 2018. So he caught 35 passes, had 5.67 yards, and that's pretty much when there was a whole bunch of receivers also around him too. It was a crowded receiver corps. But then he got hurt in 2019, but he had that one big game. He caught 64 yards, he had 2 touchdowns, and that was with Arbuckle at the quarterback. So. Maybe they have chemistry together. I mean, I don't know. So he would be my main play there. It's $4,000. But Arbuckle, I could see someone like Arbuckle coming in and surprising everybody. Just the whole idea. He's back with Ryan Dinwiddie and all that. It was his QB coach in Calgary. So I see Arbuckle as a sneaky play. I'm not saying I'm playing him in my main lineup or anything like that. But I don't know. I think he could possibly surprise some people if he plays.
Yeah, this should be a fun game. There's you mentioned Ryan Dinwiddie, their former QB coach out of Calgary, so it's a bit of a chess match in play here. Some things in play, so it'll be interesting to see how this game turns out. Calgary, I'm going to skip around a bit. We'll talk to QB, but I want to first mention what will turn out to probably be a very obvious play because the entire industry, there's very little CFL DFS content out there. But just the little bit that I've seen on Twitter and reading team reports, everybody's extremely high on Kadeem Carey for good reason. He's priced there. The team at YFC is going to be the same. Kadeem Carey is the guy, may even be the cover boy. I don't know. We'll see. I'm Mr. Leverage, so I may go elsewhere on my cover, but I'm definitely going to play this guy. And I'm familiar with him from his past year. He was a Chicago Bear draft pick. I think it was the 4th round. At 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. But his first year in the CFL, rushed for over 400 yards, a really solid, chunky 5.6 YPC. I always put a lot of weight in that when I can. Scored 2 touchdowns. He was active in the passing game. He caught 15, passes. Nothing super great, but in a primary role now, he's expected to really blow up. Everybody in the industry seems to think so. Playing against the Argonauts rushing defense that, maybe it'll be improved time. We'll be able to tell here real quick. But they were horrible, giving up over 100, almost 120 yards in the ground per game. They got gashed for 22 rushing touchdowns. For me, it's just a really obvious play, and for everyone else. So expect mega chalk on him. The early ownership projections all have Carey quite high owned. It's not a play that I'm going to get away from. I'm really anti-chalk. You know that from doing shows with me, but I'll play chalk when it makes sense, and it definitely makes sense against Toronto to run out there Kadeem Carey. So he's just way too cheap. He probably should be priced much higher considering what he's going to do. But talk to me about QBs and wide receivers for this team, because there's a couple sneaky receivers here too. With Rodgers gone now, guys stepping into these roles that are probably going to have big seasons.
Well, and first of all, I agree with the Carey call, especially if Mitchell is limited anyway. So I think it's even going to give him more action, or more touches. But for the receivers, man, you got the one kid. Oh my God, I just showed up. Mayala. I guess Mayala's in play, $5,900. He's a speedster. He had ended up the 2019 with a couple 100-yard games. So he's probably my top play there. Anybody else?
I'll just jump in real quick too while you're getting that. But one of my favorite value plays last year, well, not last year, 2019, here I go again. Josh Huff. He was a solid value guy.
I was gonna say, I'm thinking Huff. I couldn't. Okay,
Huff. Yeah, go for it. He finished with 43, 5, 7, and 1. It's like the fourth option. So Huff might step into the second behind Mayala and have a big year. I really like him.
You got Huff, and you got Kamir Jordan. I just drew a blank on Jordan's name too. So that's the problem with. I just think they're too mixed up of all of them. Probably Mayala I like the best, but Kamar Jordan's 5,300. Just don't know where we're gonna go. Then you got Ambles. So what's Ambles' price? Ambles is. I'm not touching these receivers right now. Then, if anything, it's gonna be Mayala. Ambles is 6,000. I'd rather stick with Mayala after seeing what he did at the end. At the end of the 2019 season.
Yeah, he went on a streak there. He scored 20 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games there, and he's a burner, a classic burner. So, he finished 39, 5, 7, 1, and 5. 300 of those yards came in the last 5 games, and all 5 of the touchdowns came in the final game. So, some good momentum. Obviously the season was canceled, so it killed some of it, but it would have been some good momentum heading into the new year. But Josh Huff, he's just an all reliable value guy. He's a little expensive to start here. But I still like my guy Huff. I'm partial to him because he made me good money last time.
Toronto did give up 307 passing yards per game 2019, and most passing touchdowns 36. So obviously there's gonna be some points scored for these guys, but it matters which ones. And I guess I do like the Josh Huff call. Like you said, he's Mr. Reliable. But I'm kind of leaning toward Mayala right now.
Yeah, Toronto is just, they were battle. They were the team to target against, mini stack against for sure. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes at all. Looking at their personnel, it doesn't seem like it, but you never know. All right, and then the last 2 teams here, another fairly bad team in 2019, and they're probably have the worst on paper roster in the entire league. They're picked to finish near dead last by pretty much all analysts that I've seen. Ottawa Red Blacks, they don't have any key injuries for week 1, so that's a good start. But looking at their roster, it's really it's not great. Matt Nichols is going to be getting the start in week 1, it looks like, over Dom Davis. Man, they're going to be cellar dwellers. Nichols, we mentioned in my write-up, he was with Winnipeg before he got hurt, opened the door for Blaros and some other guys. Now he's getting the shot here with Ottawa. He did throw for almost 2,000 yards in his previous season, 15 touchdowns while getting picked off only 5 times. So he does have talent, but he's not surrounded by a ton of it. Running back wise, if I needed to get sneaky, this is where it'd be. It sounds like Tim Flanders is going to be getting the first crack at carries. He's really cheap, and I get that. He's on Price Pick School, woohoo. But Anthony Coombs, man, I think he might end up being the guy. Maybe not necessarily at running back, because it's a little bit of he's probably more of a slot back receiver guy. But I think he's going to end up getting enough touches to really, kind of outshine Flanders, even if it's not the running back spot. He operates kind of like a I wrote it up as a hybrid slot back, which is kind of a conundrum because that already is a hybrid wide receiver running back. But he does a little bit of everything, gets some carries, he gets peppered with targets. The Ottawa's their new coach was Powell, the police, I believe. He runs a lot of gadgetry style plays, Coombs specialty. So we could see him, in a real good position to pop. It's a risky play, of course, but if I'm running multiples and I'm probably going to run 3, 4, 5, 6 lineups in that 10K to first, Coombs could be a guy that, don't be surprised if he has 15, 20 points if he scored 2 touchdowns off some trickery. And people are like, who is this guy? He also could very well put up 2 fantasy points. So I'll make sure to let you guys know that as well. But I feel good about him as over Flanders. We'll see though. Flanders, I don't know what to expect from him. He's played 19 career games. Really cheap. If you need a really, really cheap running back, you got him there. And then at receiver, Derrick Harris is obviously their number one. He caught 62 passes, 2 touchdowns, over 700 yards. They've got the speedster Devontae Dedmon. They've got Aurelio Lopes. Nothing really for me to write home about for DFS purposes. If I am getting, some exposure here, it's probably to Coombs and not likely anyone else, because I could see Ottawa just getting absolutely annihilated by this new look Edmonton team. What do you think?
I have actually some interest in Jordan Smallwood from the XFL. So he's back. Yeah. And I was trying to call up him his stats, and he actually, as before the season got shut down there, he's last 2 games, he had 9 passes, 161 yards. The whole season at 236 yards. But I mean, the whole receiving situation is such a mess right now. It's so inexperienced. I could see Smallwood at 20. What's his price? Is that right? 2,500.
Yeah.
I could definitely. I mean, that's not a bad play because what is she gonna do? I mean, I'm not saying I'm using him in cash, but I'm just saying that's kind of a sneaky. You make him more than one lineup, something. Throw in Jordan Smallwood somewhere.
All right, and then the last team here on the slate, Edmonton Elks. They had to change their name. We were discussing that before. Elks is their name. Key injuries for week 1, looks like none. Trevor Harris, man, he's a legit starting level, DFS quarterback that you could run as your main guy. If you don't want to, pay up for Jardo and go with, a guy like Harris, I definitely think it's a good play. 9.4 is a reasonable price for him. I think you're going to see his numbers, go straight ballistic. He already threw for over 4,000 yards, 18 touchdowns in 2019. He rushed for 6. Now you're giving him some legit weapons. He's very much in play here against an Ottawa defense that was very, very putrid. Weapons wise, we mentioned James Wilder came over, lowly Toronto Argonauts to be there. He's contemplating retirement before deciding to join Edmonton. So he's there as the running back. He might be a little bit too expensive to try out just yet. He couldn't really get going with Toronto. He still had a decent season. He caught 487 passes, 4 touchdowns, 415 yards. Running wasn't so great, but I mean, Toronto they didn't have anything good. So stuck there. This Ottawa rushing defense did surrender almost 120 yards, similar to the Argonauts back in 2019. They also got blitzed for 27 touchdowns on the ground. So Wilder could, end up being a sneakier option with a higher price if you want to go that route. And then, of course, at slot back, wide receiver, the different options. Darrell Walker returns to Edmonton. Spent 1 season with the Argonauts before returning to Edmonton, where he had all that success in the past. Pretty prolific downfield target, 5,400 career receiving yards in a 5-year career, which is outstanding. It really speaks volumes about just how good this guy is. When you look at his stats with Toronto, had a 1,000-yard season, and that team was just like, I can't keep saying it enough, was awful. So the hype for his return to Edmonton is huge. He's definitely one of the top, 2, if not the top receiver on this slate, even more so than Banks when you consider price, because he is really, way too cheap considering what his role is going to be. 8.5 compared to 10.8 when his numbers could be similar, if not better than Banks. It's a really big deal. So I'm definitely in on him. They've already are returning, Greg Ellingson, who had a 1,300-yard season, 101 catches. Armonte Edwards had a 69 catch season, over 1,000 yards. And then Tavon Smith, 690 yards. So they got 4 guys that have all caught over 600 yards in the last season. Harris has a ton of weapons. So put them up there for me with Hamilton, in terms of DFS goodness, and even Saskatchewan. Those are the 3 teams. They're obviously a little more spendy, but I want to get a lot of my exposure from those 3 teams. And I think it's a pretty safe, bet. With the pricing being soft in week 1, should be able to stuff your lineups with players from those teams. So what's your plan of attack here? Where do you rate Harris compared to Fajardo as like your QB1, and then Darrell Walker and everybody else?
Well, actually, first somebody just asked, Smallwood should be starting actually for Ottawa. He's taking first team reps as a practice today. So somebody asked that question in chat. But no, I am playing Harris, man. I'm gonna do everything I can, such as I'll be multi-entering. I'll be playing lineups with Harris, Ellingson, and Walker, all 3 together. I mean, they're so cheap. I mean, Harris is only 9,400, and he's got just as good of a chance as anyone else right now to finish top quarterback this week. And so you can play him with Ellison, you can play him with Walker. I can even play all 3 of them together in GDPs. So Harris is one of my top plays, actually, of the week, if not my number 1 at quarterback. I like Trevor Harris a lot. So yeah. That's to me, those 3 guys that's explosive right there. So a lot of upside with Harris.
Yeah, that's a good late night hammer. We always say that in college basketball, but that's a definite team you want to get a lot of exposure to. I mean, he's $1K cheaper than Cody with similar upside, and then Walker's 8.5 price is ludicrously cheap to the point where
Tavon Smith.
Yeah, Walker may not be that cheap ever again the rest of the season. He's going to be up in that over 10K range by the next couple of weeks if he has the games that we think. So, Hamilton, Saskatchewan, and Edmonton are the 3 really what it looks like the high-power teams. Got my kid in the background. I wouldn't be a show without her. And then for Calgary, the running back, Dean Carey. So that should give you a really solid player pool to start with, and then you can start, checking for some of the sneakier plays. The article will go up later on tonight. If you are a premium Discord member, you'll have access to that. If you're not in our Discord already, we'll post the link for you guys to join that. Covers all sports. We are doing a 2-month promo right now, right, Pete? Where it's 50% off. So the first 2 months are $25. Gets you access to every write-up, cheat sheet, core plays, prize picks write-up, Discord only shows that we occasionally do, in addition to the YouTube stuff that we do for free to get you guys to check us out. So let's talk prize picks. Are you ready? Do you have some prize picks access at the moment, or?
Actually, somebody just asked the question: Shaq, Cooper, or Carey?
For me, it's Carey. I don't know if you would differ, but
yeah, I'm definitely Carey too.
Yeah, Toronto's defense is I'm really certain it's not going to be that improved. If Saskatchewan turns it into a shootout, BC may have to abandon the run early. It makes too much sense for Carey as a main team play. I think it's going to be really highly owned, like ridiculously high owned, like with the Olympics, what we're seeing with Americans right now in the Olympic Games, 60% owned. Even though it's a 4-game slate, we could potentially see him be that highly owned. There's not a ton of content out there, and the people that are talking about CFL, even if they don't do DFS, just people that are talking about in general, are just hyping the hell out of Kadeem Carey. So watch him, put up a 5 ball for us. But I think you got to play him in cash. And I'm Mr. Anti-Chop. So if I'm saying to play him, that really should tell you guys something. So all right, any other questions before we do the prize picks? Let's see.
And actually, Kay Sizzle here just mentioned about Wilder being a dual threat. Oh, never mind, it's rushing yards. So I'm looking. I just called up price picks, so might as well go to price picks. So okay. What Wilder 40 rushing yards. So wait, what do we? Oh, I'm just looking at rushing yards. Man, they got price picks has got a lot of single stats now. Rushing yards, passes, receptions, TDs. They got a lot.
I think they're trying to rope in the NFL crowd, right? To give them because I think they offer all this for NFL and price picks is like as popular as it's ever been. So I think they're doing all this as kind of like a preview for, hey, this is what we're going to do for NFL. So this is cool because we're going to get a lot of edge with this. I don't really like the passing yards really too much. I guess maybe Harris would like the best is over 310. I wouldn't really like, I think he could get over, but looking at the passing yards, it looks pretty correct. But the rushing and the receiving yards looks like we have some edge. The first one that jumped out to me right away was Darrell Walker, 68.5 receiving yards. First game back with the Edmonton boys. You don't think they're going to be peppering the hell out of him with targets? If he doesn't get 100 plus, I would be very shocked. That's the first one that really stood out to me as a lock and load personally. What'd you say? You said Walker, Wilder 40 rushing yards. Wilder, think about Wilder and cases said about them being dual threat. Yeah, he's a big time receiver for a guy that's categorized as a running back. So I don't know how much they're going to run the ball at first. I mean, I guess if they get a big lead, maybe he breaks one. But Kadeem Carey, 52.5 though. If we think he's going to be the lock and load, heavy workload guy against Toronto, he should easily eclipse 52.5, right?
Yeah. And what about I would take the over on Carey. Definitely over 52.5. And just Johnny Augustine 45. Now, I would maybe take the under on Augustine, especially when we only have him start right now. Right? We have Brady Oliveira starting, right?
That's what the team's depth chart has Oliveira atop the depth chart starting.
I just saw a beat to set it too. So possibly, I mean, I'm not saying that's the problem. Though. I mean, Oliveira starts. We've seen that happen. Augustine comes in and runs the rest of the day. But
yeah.
These are still, some of these are low, man. Even William, I'm not a big William Powell fan this week, but 60 yards, he should only get 60 yards.
Yeah, man, they're baiting hard because it's Saskatchewan. He's the only show in town. I think it's really just he's going to lose touchdown equity to Cody, not necessarily rushing yards. So 60 is definitely low for a bona fide RB1 that gets a heavy workload. That's pretty low, right? Yeah. Unders, I'm always, what's funny is how we just had, like when we crushed it, it was unders. So it's like unders are definitely where you can get that edge. Sometimes I'm guilty of hitting too many overs, but I don't know. I'm not a believer in Augustine. There is a good conglomerate of people that still believe he is going to take more work than Oliveira here in week 1, but that's not what the team's saying. So if we go, but I mean, we know coach speak could be the complete opposite. So Augustine's fantasy score is 9.5 too. I wouldn't particularly mind hitting the under on that as well. If he doesn't score a touchdown, I really highly doubt he would hit that.
Yep, I take the under on that.
Looking at fantasy scores, you have another one?
No, I'm just saying they got a lot of plays here, man. There's
yeah, it's nuts. The single stat, I think we can really. I mean, receptions. So here you got. Excuse me. If you wanted to hit the James Wilder because you think he's going to catch a lot of balls, they have 3 receptions total for James Wilder. I think he's capable of hitting that. The Darrell Walker 4. I would probably I don't know. They don't always let you pair from the same game, and you might have to do 2 separate. But Walker is over. 68.5 receiving yards and over 4 receptions seems like a pretty strong play.
Mayala over 3 receptions. I would probably take Mayala over 3.
They don't have any. They don't have any Burnham props. That's kind of weird. Unless I don't. Yeah, I thought they would have them, but they don't. Maybe they'll add more.
What about Shaq Evans for 4 receptions? Yeah, that's probably right. I wouldn't mess with that.
Yeah, he's 4 and 72.5 receiving yards. It's probably he probably would go over, but it's pretty close. They do have passing touchdowns on here. Trevor Harris 1.5. He should be able to get 2, I would think, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so with that receiver.
I like his over. I kind of like Cody Fajardo's 1. I know he's a dual threat. He may rush them all in, but he's 1 is kind of they're trying to bait us there. And then rushing touchdowns, they have Shaq Cooper 0.5 and William Powell 0.5. I probably, even though it's just they only got to score 1, I probably wouldn't touch either because I worry about Powell. That feels like a bait. I worry about Powell getting to the 1 and then Cody steals it. But just to kind of, I know we jumped around a little bit, just to kind of go back and repeat the top 3 for me. I think Darrell Walker over 68.5 yards. is a big one. Kadeen Carey over 52.5 rushing yards, and then the Augustine under 9.5. If you don't believe he's going to score a touchdown, he's just not going to make that.
The Wilder over 3 receptions.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Take that one, and then passing yards. I don't look at passing yards yet. You got
they seem kind of high.
Harris 310 is kind of high. Nichols 250. Nichols is the lowest at 215. Bo Levi 310. He's hurting too, right?
Yeah, he's hurting a little bit. They may not have to huck it and chuck it because of how bad Toronto is, but Bo Levi's kind of a stud. He's like a low key stud at times. He had some GPT winning scores in 2019. So
did you gave the thumbs up to the Trevor Harris over 1.5 touchdowns, right? Yeah, you want to slam that shit.
Yeah, that's a good one too. And then I guess I'll have 3 for sure in my article. We may even have a video. Devin sometimes will do a price picks video, but the Michael Reilly 240 yards, as long as he plays, obviously he's capable of going over 240. Sizzle had mentioned that BC's kind of gone more towards a passing squad instead of a running team with Reilly. So 240 would be on his low end probably. Yeah.
No, I agree. So yeah, there's some definitely we can take advantage, especially week 1 on CFL. Yeah, you'll have a couple plays in your article, right?
Yeah, I'll have at least. I usually do 3 in the price picks plays in my article, and then we'll probably have a video, and then we do that group one. So there'll be a couple in there for free for people that aren't subbed yet as well. But you pretty much know what my top 3 are, even if you haven't subbed yet. You know where my head's at. So any final things? I'll just harp again real quick. It is half off. $25 for your first 2 months. College football does start at the end of this month, believe it or not. We're going to have some preview shows here coming up. I would like to have some conference preview shows done with you, Pete. Maybe next week sometime. I'll talk to you more about that. But yeah, college football is the right time to sign up. We had a really good season last year. I know we're kind of, me personally known as a college basketball guy. You was an MLB guy, but together we did some really good things in college football. So getting in nice and early gets you access to, Aussie football, MLB, NFL, NBA, Summer League, pretty much every sport that has a DFS for it. We have a writer for it. We've even got a gentleman by the name of Big E that does CSGO. He does a very good job with that. That gets you access to everything. So $25 a month for that kind of access for proven profit in cash games and single entry is definitely a very good, deal in my mind. Of course, I'm biased, but that's just how I feel because a lot of people have followed us over from other sites that we were at, and they like the deal. The Discord's always live with a lot of chatter. Pete, any final words before we end our first CFL show of the new year?
No. Pretty much I'm on the Trevor Harris train this week with Ellington and Walker, and everybody's gonna get used to us because we'll be on here all the time with college football starting in a couple weeks, and plus the CFL. A lot going on here, plus with MLB still every day. I should be having a good night tonight and some of my lineup. So no, we cover the sport, especially with the small sports. If it's just DK sport, we cover it. So your small sports player, jump on.
Yeah, so expect every weekend college football live shows. We also do a podcast on Thursday nights typically. And then if all goes well with CFL and people like it, we'll continue. I mean, we're going to be playing it, so we might as well cover it as well. And maybe weekly shows for the CFL as well. So I appreciate everyone that watched live. If you're watching it on demand, thank you. Leave a like if you're watching it at any point. Comments. It does help us be seen with the YouTube algo. Appreciate it. Let's win lots of money. Somebody in the YFC circle, whether you're viewing this now or with us in the Discord, win that 10K. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Pete. Everybody, take care.
Good luck, guys.
See you.